Hi, I'm Tom Brookshire.
And I'm Pat Summerall. With just 3 Sundays left in the NFL's regular season, no one team or player seems to be monopolizing the headlines the way the Dolphins as a team and O.J. Simpson individually did last year. So, Tom, what team and player do you think will wind up with the glory this year?
Well, the Oakland Raiders might be the most solid-looking team, even though they lost last week, and Stabler's had a great year at quarterback. But I think maybe Chuck Foreman, the very versatile back for the Minnesota Vikings, could be perhaps the individual if you have to do it that way.
Got a lot of touchdowns. Jim Hart, I suppose, and Terry Metcalf would deserve some consideration too, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, and Cincinnati's Kenny Anderson, I think, or Isaac Curtis are individuals that certainly have had great days. Miami still has Greasy, and the coach is Don Shula, though. There's still some big people around.
There's consideration there, too.
That's right.
We'll be right back with This Week in the NFL after this message.
Well, since last season, when the New York Giants moved their home games to the Yale Bowl, they've only one victory in 11 games they've played there, and that was over the St. Louis Cardinals last year. This year's Cardinals are a different-looking team than last year's, but the Giants still haven't found a way to win in their New Haven home, away from home.
The first time the Giants had the ball last week, they might have foreseen the kind of day that was in store. Despite his unusual technique, Dave Jennings managed only a 31-yard average on 4 punts. And on top of that, there was still operating room for number 21, Terry Metcalf. The second time New York had the ball, taking advantage of solid protection from his offensive line, Craig Morton tried to surprise the Cardinals with a first down pass. Number 43, Norm Thompson's return had St. Louis in good position again. And Jim Bakken was called in for his second field goal. And a 6-0 lead at the end of the first quarter. After loosening up his arms and fingers, the new Giant hero, former Dallas quarterback Craig Morton, finally completed a successful drive with just 21 seconds left in the first half. Ron Johnson, recently returned from an ankle injury, did the honors for New York. Johnson's touchdown gave New York the lead 7-6 at the half, and as has become the custom with the new Giants, after helping set up a score, the number 1 draft choice from Ohio State, guard John Hicks, number 74, congratulated the scorer in the end zone. In the third quarter, Craig Morton built the New York lead to 14-6 with a strong pump fake and then a perfect spiral to tight end Bob Tucker in the end zone. On the next series, Jim Hart scrambled out of trouble long enough to find a new St. Louis favorite, wide receiver Earl Thomas, number 82. Thomas' touchdown brought the Cardinals within 1 at 14-13. And then in the final 5 minutes came the patented St. Louis Cardinal long-range explosion, this time from Jim Hart to Mel Gray. In all, Hart completed 25 passes, 5 of them to Mel Gray. St. Louis led 20-14, but the Giants were not dead yet. With a minute and a half left, Craig Morton found Walker Gillette alone in the end zone, and the Giants led once more, 21-20. For the 4th week in a row, it looked as though the Giants would win a close one in the final minutes. But for the 3rd week in a row, the magic was only a mirage. This time, with just 3 seconds left, Jim Bakken supplied another thrilling finish for the Cardinals and another disheartening loss for the Giants. St. Louis had 9 wins, the most in the NFL, along with Oakland. But as they say, it was a fight to the finish.
Pat, before last Sunday's game, the Eagles were the unfortunate owners of a 5-game losing streak. And at one time, they appeared to be playoff bound, but it looks like wait till next year for the Birds, huh?
It's unfortunate but true, Tom, and chances of halting that 5-game Philadelphia skid weren't the best last week as they traveled to Washington to battle the playoff-hungry Redskins.
The Washington Redskins have been rounding into playoff form, and one primary reason is the presence of a hard-hitting, aggressive defense. Early last Sunday, though, the Redskins watched as the Eagles demonstrated some aggressive defensive tactics of their own. The Eagle defense held tight until Redskins signal caller Billy Kilmer began to probe the Philly secondary. Redskin kicker Mark Mosley salvaged 2 drives with medium-range field goals as Washington jumped in front 6-0. In the final minutes of the first half, Kilmer turned to number 80 Roy Jefferson, whose quick outs maneuvered Washington goalward. After Jefferson outquicked the Eagles, Kilmer went to his tight end Jerry Smith for the game's first touchdown. At halftime, the Redskins led 13-0, but in the 3rd period, the Eagle offense arose from a first-half slumber, and aired by Roman Gabriel to Charlie Young completions, the Eagles took wing. Gabe finished the drive with a point-piercing arrow to Harold Carmichael, slashing the Redskin lead to 6 points. The momentum had suddenly shifted in favor of the visitors, but when Tom Dempsey kicked off to number 21 Larry Jones, the comeback fire was extinguished, and the 6th Eagle defeat in a row was very close at hand. Number 21, Larry Jones, is one of only 3 rookies on the entire Washington squad, and his 102-yard kickoff return silenced the Eagles. In the 4th period, however, Gabriel did again manage to move his club. But the movement was short and inconsistent, and an interception by Redskin safety Kenny Houston, number 27, quelled the Eagle offense for good. Houston's theft led to a short Redskin touchdown, bringing the final tally to a convincing 26-7 victory in favor of the boys from the District of Columbia.
Although the Dallas-Houston game was billed as the Battle of Texas, much more was at stake for both teams as the resurgent Oilers fought for their 5th win in a row, and the Cowboys fought to stay in contention for an NFC wildcard berth.
Happiness turned quickly into the Alamo for the Oiler faithful as Houston reverted to their early form, as Dallas, led by number 77 Bill Gregory, tried to stomp them into cannon fodder. There were too many Mexicans at the Alamo, and at times there appeared to be too many Cowboys for the Oiler offense to fend off. For most of Sunday, the Dallas offense was stagnant, and quarterback Roger Staubach stood in and really took his licks. Led by Ed Too Tall Jones, the Doomsday defense sacked Dan Pastorini 7 times for 75 yards in losses. In all, the aroused Cowboys held Houston to a puny 81 yards in total offense. The main antagonist was number 79 Harvey Martin, who dropped in on Dante on 4 occasions. The most heartening aspect for Dallas was the play of rookie running back Charlie Young, who more than filled the cleats of ailing Calvin Hill. The only touchdown of the day came on a disputed dive by rookie Doug Dennison that gave Dallas a 7-0 lead. A rare moment for Houston came when Lynn Dickey replaced the battered Pastorini and threw up a balloon that nestled into the hands of Billy Parks. But that tiny spark blew up in the Oilers' face when safety Cliff Harris denied Dickey down deep at the goal line. Total defensive domination won the Battle of Texas as Dallas eased past Houston 10-0.
A slew of crippling injuries has cut a swath through a Patriot team that only a few weeks ago was on the verge of a playoff spot in the American Football Conference, Tom.
Well, Pat, that's true, but even though Jimmy Plunkett was working with new men at most of the skilled positions, he was able to muster enough muscle to outscore the struggling Baltimore Colts.
At times, Baltimore quarterback Marty Dumrays finessed himself out of almost impossible situations against New England. But in the end, there were too many points and one too many defenders for Marty to cope with. However, early in their game with the Patriots, the eager Colts appeared on the verge of an upset when Dumrays found rookie Roger Carr with a rainbow. Unfortunately for the Colts, Carr's touchdown was voided by a holding penalty, so Baltimore knuckled down on defense. Leading the charge was number 78, John Dutton, the Colts' rapidly improving #1 draft choice. The game remained scoreless until the Patriots' Rodrigo Barnes, a former Dallas Cowboy, forced and recovered a fumble by Cotton Spire. The Patriots built a 7-0 lead when Jim Plunkett found linebacker turned tight end John Tanner for a touchdown. Trailing 17-3, Baltimore rebounded on Domray's arm and the sure hands of Roger Carr. The Colts narrowed the margin to 17-10 on a pretty quick hitter by Lydell Mitchell. But New England exploded for 10 more points on a field goal and a short smash by Manny McHerron and led Baltimore 27-10 in the final period. Even with the game lost, Domray's and Carr continued to confound Chuck Fairbanks' old college defenses. The game ended with a banged-up Domray squirting over with a last gasp touchdown, but it was too little too late as New England conquered Baltimore 27-17.
In order to keep their division title hopes alive, the Buffalo Bills had to beat the Cleveland Browns last Sunday. And amidst a cold, wet Cleveland afternoon, the Bills did just that.
From the opening kickoff, it wasn't hard to tell that it was simply going to be one of those days for the Cleveland Browns. Their luck continued when on their second series, the Browns mounted an incredible 25-play drive and managed only a field goal. Then Cleveland kicked off to number 89, Wallace Francis. And last year's AFC kickoff return leader brought it back 46 yards. As if the return by Francis wasn't enough, 2 plays later, O.J. Simpson did his thing from 41 yards out. The Browns' frustration had only just begun, though, as number 17, Brian Sipe, retreated to pass from his own end zone. Sipe was flopping like a fish out of water in his attempt to avoid the safety brought on by Bill defensive tackle Mike Kadish. But while the Browns' offense failed, the Buffalo passing attack fared little better. Only 1 pass completion and 7 attempts spell the story of the Bills' air game. But with a potent ground attack and O.J. Simpson and number 34, Jim Braxton, the pass just wasn't needed as badly on this Sunday. Buffalo added 2 field goals to lead 15-3, 3 times victimizing Brown quarterback Mike Phipps with the interception. The only time the Browns produced was within the final minutes of play as Mike Phipps finally began connecting with his own receivers. A Phipps to Ken Brown hookup with 8 seconds remaining made the score closer, but the Bills won it anyway, 15-10 over the rapidly fading Cleveland Browns.
Well, Pat, Buffalo's back on top in the AFC East, or at least they're tied with Miami again, despite losing to the Dolphins in that down-of-the-wire battle for first place 2 weeks ago.
And the Dolphins, who had won 5 straight and were starting finally to look like world champions again, gave Don Shula some more gray hairs last Sunday in Shea Stadium.
It has been a trying season for Don Shula, mostly because 11 different starters, 4 on defense and 7 on offense, have missed games due to injuries. But last week against Joe and the Jets, the Dolphins appeared at first to have everything under control. After a close inspection of the Shea Stadium turf, Joe Namath decided it was time for a little landscaping. Having established a firm foothold, Namath accounted for the only score of the first half with a play-action rollout pass to his 6'5" tight end Rich Castor, number 88. The third period belonged to another number 12, Bob Greasy, whose style is substantially different from Joe Namath's. Bob Greasy can scramble and he can run. Last Sunday, when he saw a way to the end zone, he ran for it. Gracie's touchdown tied the game at 7, and except for a New York field goal, there was no more scored until midway in the fourth period when Greasy threw a lateral pass to wide receiver Nat Moore, who did a pretty good job of getting the ball downfield to the other wide receiver, Paul Warfield. From the 6, Greasy turned what appeared to be a broken play into an easy 6-pointer to Jim Kick. Miami led 14-10, but with 5 minutes left in the game, Joe Namath turned the clock back about a half a dozen years. As number 88, Rich Castor, said after the game, we showed them a formation they hadn't seen all day. They got mixed up, and I got wide open behind them. Castor's 6th reception and 2nd touchdown gave the Jets a 17-14 lead, but there was still plenty of time for Bob Greasy and the Dolphins to come back. For the second week in a row, number 47, Roscoe Word, killed off a final drive with an interception. The Jets had their 3rd straight victory, and the Dolphins their 3rd loss of the season. More losses than in the 2 previous seasons combined. While the Jets may have deserved the victory, the Dolphins can blame no one but themselves for the loss. For in the game, they committed numerous un-Dolphin-like errors, including 7 penalties and 4 fumbles. 1 by the usually sure-handed Larry Zonka, and 2 by equally sure-handed Jake Scott, who nullified the effectiveness of his 2 interceptions. The Miami errors were not limited to the offense and defense, for the usually impeccable Dolphin special teams also erred at least 4 times. Perhaps the most telling error came with 2 minutes remaining, when for the 2nd time in the game, the Dolphins were denied the ball because of running into the punter. There are many reasons why one team wins or another loses, and no one knows this better than Don Shula and a new winner named Charlie.
Well, Pat, last week in Detroit, the Lions were very much in need of a victory to keep their playoff hopes alive.
And luckily for the Lions, Tom, their opponents was a bunch of Bears from Chicago who started hibernating about 6 weeks ago.
This has been another very lean season for the Chicago Bears, a team long slumbering in the caves of defeat. And last Sunday in the Lions' lair, they were meeting a Detroit team which has remote but real playoff aspirations. The Lions came out roaring as number 74 Larry Hand mauled Chicago quarterback Gary Huff, number 19. The pressure got to Huff early, and his errant pass was picked off by Levi Johnson, who raced in for the touchdown. Throughout the dark, cold, and rainy afternoon, the Bears were forced to punt the ball away and then see it run right back down at them by number 26, Dick Gerard. who consistently put the Lions in quick strike position. The lightning struck in the person of number 42, Alty Taylor, whose 22-yard run gave Detroit a 17-0 lead. Then, once again, it was Dick Geron slicing 58 yards to set up another Lion tally. The score by number 31, Jimmy Jones, a rookie, was his first in the NFL, and combined with a Steve Owens one-yarder gave the Lions a 34-3 lead. Then there was a new quarterback for the Bears in the person of number 10, Bobby Douglas, who held an impromptu meeting right in the middle of the backfield. But while Douglas may have his shortcomings as a quarterback, he's one tough cookie as a halfback, and his strongly elusive scrambling moved the Bears in close. The touchdown came on a 9-yard run by Clifton Taylor, number 22, and was the first rushing touchdown by Chicago in 23 quarters of play. And since rushing was the name of the game, Bobby Douglas dished up more of the same. Bobby's scramble set up the last score of the day, which came on a 5-yard pass to Bo Rather. But it was too little too late as the prowling Lions hassled the practically dormant Bears, score 34-17.
On September the 9th, two rookies named Eric Torkelson and Don Woods both were in the preseason camp of the Green Bay Packers. On September the 10th, Don Woods was cut and claimed by the San Diego Chargers. Since then, Woods, a quarterback turned running back, has become the rookie sensation of the league, gaining 840 yards in his first 11 games, Tom.
Boy, and he's quick, I'll tell you, Pat. And there's also Eric Torkelson. Nobody had heard of him until the Chargers invaded Lambeau Field, home of the Green Bay Packers last week.
Despite their dismal 3-8 record, the San Diego Chargers are one of the most improved teams in pro football, and a month ago they might even have been favored to dispatch the Green Bay Packers. But in that month, these Packers have begun living up to their legendary name. And though their improvement coincides with the arrival of John Hadel, the Pack is doing it mainly with defense. This perfect play by defensive end Clarence Williams, number 83, is typical of the alert, experienced brand of ball the Pack has been playing. And all facets of the Packers roster have been contributing to the victory drive, which may even yet overhaul the Minnesota Vikings. In this case, it is Eric Torkelson who is Johnny on the spot to ring up 6 points for Packers special teams. Green Bay's two great cornerbacks, Willie Buchanan and Ken Ellis, number 48, are reunited again after Buchanan missed most of last season with a broken leg. And that makes the Packer D a threat to score from anywhere on the field. In fact, Green Bay had 20 points on the board before the offense could contribute a touchdown. But John Hadel got his steady hand in, completing 14 of 22, including this 24-yarder to MacArthur Lane to wrap up an impressive 34-0 shutout over the tough Chargers. And though we hesitate to forecast that the Pack is back, we can say it was a glorious day in Green Bay.
The Cincinnati Bengals had all their first-string running backs injured last Sunday when they faced the Kansas City Chiefs. And so quarterback Ken Anderson took advantage of the opportunity to bolster his NFL-leading passing statistics.
Bobby Bell was the only Chief who could find humor in last Sunday's game against the Cincinnati Bengals, because even if Cincinnati's mascot was acting more like a curious footy cat than a caged man-eater, the Bengal defense was more than willing to bare their claws when the quarry were the Kansas City quarterbacks. Five times Kansas City signal callers were pounced upon by Bengal defenders, who limited the Chiefs to just 6 first downs for the entire afternoon. It was a banner day for the Bengals Team D, and thanks to a certain number 77, Bob Maddox from Frostburg State, they even put 6 points on the board on their way to a tiger-sized licking of the Chiefs. And for the Chiefs, whose lost season now reads 4 wins and 7 losses, the best they could do was generate 2 field goals behind the still, at least picturesque, passing arm of 18-year veteran Len Dawson. It was a particularly frustrating day for the 39-year-old Dawson, as frequently big plays like this 64-yarder to number 89, Otis Taylor, failed to result in point production. The most bitter moment of the afternoon was the nullification of this apparent Otis Taylor touchdown pass. But despite genuine disagreement by Kansas City's 12th player, head coach Hank Stram, the ruling stuck and the Chiefs' hopes for a comeback dissolved. As for the aging Kansas City defense, only once did it show its brutal form of old. Quarterback Ken Anderson got more than his share of revenge, however, and he did it with touchdown passes, the first to number 85, Isaac Curtis. The second went to third-string running back number 43, Ed Williams, who not only scored once, but rushed for 96 yards, which promises a lot for a 250-pound fullback in just his first start. Anderson's third strike went back to number 85, Isaac Curtis, whose touchdown propensity and over-the-head spike have become a trademark. The fourth and final touchdown of Anderson's aerial act went to number 25, Chip Myers, whose catch made it 33-6 in favor of the playoff-bidding Bengals.
Well, Pat, until last week, the Oakland Raiders had the finest record in all of pro football. They were standing very tall with 9 wins and only 1 loss.
Not only that, Tom, but their 9 wins were all in a row, which gave them the longest victory streak in the NFL this year. But then came Denver with a grudge to settle.
As the saying goes, Thanksgiving came early for Oakland fans when 2 weeks ago the Raiders became the first team to sew up an NFL division championship. And last week they figured to increase their lead over a heretofore disappointing Denver team. Oakland opened fast and furious with 2 potent rookie runners. Number 34, Harold Hart, was dynamite on this 67-yard kickoff return. Then number 30, Mark Van Egan, showed that he too has a silver and black future. However, as good as Oakland's youngsters were, Denver's were even better. Number 24, Otis Armstrong, accounted for 146 Bronco rushing yards on 29 carries. But even better was number 32, John Keyworth, a rookie who put Denver on the board first and racked up 148 yards rushing with a 10-yard per carry average. While the Broncos were chalking up the rushing yardage, Ken Stabler and Fred Biletnikoff were connecting through the air. For the day, Fantastic Fred had 8 receptions for 121 yards and 2 scores. The first on this 34-yarder and tied the game at 10-10. However, on this day, Fred's heroics were no match for the slashing runs of Keyworth, who once again unlocked the door to the Raider end zone. Then Steve Ramsey whistled an 8-yard scoring pass to Jerry Simmons, and Denver led 20-10. Once again, Ken Stabler went to his man of the hour, Fred Biletnikoff, whose second score pulled the Raiders to within 3 at 20-17. In the end, that was all the Denver defense would allow as the Broncos stunned the playoff-bound Raiders in a game that meant little in the standings, but returned a measure of respect to the men from the Mile High City.
We'll be right back with This Week in the NFL after this message. Last week, the San Francisco 49ers pulled off their second shutout in a row and also put some points on the board, which leaves the 49er faithful wishing the season were about 6 weeks longer.
At Candlestick Park, the bombs of quarterback Pat Sullivan blew away on the ill winds that have plagued Atlanta all season. Sometimes Sullivan lucked out on his overblown bombs, but on too many occasions, 49er defenders like Jimmy Johnson stood out there in center field and picked him off like Willie Mays. In 11 games, the Falcons have managed a paltry 84 points, and they've been shut out 3 times. Against the 49ers, their limp attack ran headlong into the head-on charges of Cedric Hardman, number 86. For most of 74, the moments of excellence for Atlanta have been supplied by their imposing defense. But even they were no match for quarterback Tom Owens' passing and the clutch receiving of Tom Mitchell. The 49er front wall opened up gaping holes for Larry Schreiber. And when Atlanta shored up for the run, Owen connected with gifted Gene Washington for 6. San Francisco built a 14-0 pad on Washington's second touchdown, a 53-yard catch and carry from the rookie Owen. The most exciting moment came when rookie Manfred Moore fielded a booming punt at his 12 and cut loose the afterburner. Moore's 88-yard touchdown and 2 Bruce Gossett field goals gave San Francisco an easy 27-0 victory, as Atlanta, once expected to contest the NFC Western title, now seems fully rooted in last place.
Last year, the then undefeated Minnesota Vikings and the then undefeated Los Angeles Rams played to a 10-9 mugging, in which the Vikings won in numbing cold up in Minnesota.
Well, Pat, that was last year, but in an almost endless summer days of Los Angeles last Sunday, the same assailants matched up again. And the quality of the weather this time did not have much effect on the character of the football game.
Up in Minnesota, frost has long been on the pumpkin. But in Los Angeles, the butterfly still courts the hibiscus. And the sunshine star-spangled beauties tell the seasons by whatever turns them on. And if it's the Rams, it must be autumn. But the Vikings brought the stinging breath of winter with them from Minnesota, and Fran Tarkenton threatened to freeze dry the local darlings early with back-to-back bombs. First to Jim Lash, next to John Gilliam. Having covered most of the field in 2 plays, the Vikings got the remaining yards the hard way as Chuck Foreman bounced up and over to give Minnesota a 10-0 second quarter advantage. But Jimmy Harris rallied his Sunshine Soldiers on their next possession, and this pass to Jack Snow dented the Winter Warriors for 22 yards. After 10 plays and 63 yards, Harris himself did the honors. But a missed extra point left Los Angeles an awkward 4 points away, trailing 10-6. With less than a minute remaining in the half, Tarkenton moved the Viking offense to the front burner, with 6 consecutive completions covering 65 yards. The key play being this 26-yarder to Chuck Foreman. And after 7 plays in 38 seconds, Tarkenton hit Foreman again, making the Minnesota Vikings halftime advantage 17-6. In the third quarter, neither of the adversaries could alter the score. But early in the fourth quarter, Jimmy Harris began heating up the Cold War, hitting 10 straight passes, including this one to Lawrence McCutcheon, just before Harris again dived over, making the spread Vikings 17, Rams 13. And though the Vikings ate up more than 5 minutes on their next possession, time enough remained when Harris again took to the firing line and began finding sticky-fingered receivers. Under the 2-minute mark, Harris lobbed 8 yards to Jack Snow, all alone as an interloper in Valhalla, and it was the Vikings who felt the hard frost of defeat. A repeat shows the poise and clutch touch of Jimmy Harris, intangibles that may have decided the Rams head coach Chuck Knox to trade away the veteran John Hadle. And though the Rams have been less impressive this year than last, this come from behind 20-17 victory affords Ram fans every reason to look forward to the NFC playoffs with optimism.
Well, it's prediction time. I'm even now, 24 all, and I'm going to tape up and play you tough the last few
I just got to keep my poise, I guess.
All right, how about start out with Green Bay at Philadelphia?
I like Green Bay.
Okay, I have to go with the Packers, too.
Okay, how about Houston and Pittsburgh?
This is going to be tough. Even though it's in Pittsburgh, I've got to think the Oilers might do it. I'm going to go with Houston.
All right, I'll take Pittsburgh. Kansas City, St. Louis, what do you think?
St. Louis. Looks like they're riding all the way now.
That's for the championship of the state of Missouri. How about New England at Oakland?
The Patriots are staying close, and I don't know how, but I'm going to go with the Raiders to bounce back.
All right, I sort of think the Raiders will win that one, too. And then on Monday night, Cincinnati at Miami, quickly.
I'm going to go with the Bengals.
All right, I'll take Miami.
Okay.
And at any rate, we'll be back next week to show you highlights of all those games and what happens around the NFL. I'm Pat Summerall.
And I'm Tom Brookshire, and we'll see you next week.